On the channel today, I have a Swiss-made watch costing almost 900 US dollars. Now, this is a brand that has contacted me on a few occasions actually in the past to see if I would be interested in featuring one of their watches on my channel, but I have declined in the past because, well, I just didn't see any designs from them that really struck a chord with me. But they've added a few designs to their lineup recently, and I thought, you know what, it's about time I saw one of their watches because I was keen to see what they were offering for 880 US dollars. We all know the sort of value that is available from AliExpress watches and some incredible micro brand watches these days. In fact, there is an abundance of micro brands these days offering incredible value for money watches. So I thought there really must be more to these watches than, well, the original designs and the fact that they are Swiss made. So yeah, I agreed to feature this Marine Diver on my channel. And inside of this watch we do have a Sellita SW200, of course, with this being a Swiss-made watch, a brand that claims to offer Swiss-made watches, they have to offer Swiss movements, and there's no denying the SW200 is a fantastic automatic movement. There's different grades, some are more accurate than others. Not every SW200 is the same, but to be honest, I'm happy with any of the SW200 movements. They have in the past proven themselves to be very reliable, very accurate, solid automatic movements. But I think that is where my enthusiasm ends. Swiss made watches, great. Sellita SW200 inside of these watches, fantastic. Original designs, not all of them are my sort of thing, but you have to admire brands that are still producing original looking watches, and a lot of their watches, if not all of them, are really quite unusual to look at, so I applaud them for that. But I think that's about it. I think my instincts were probably correct. In my hand, this just doesn't feel like an $880 Swiss-made watch. I mean, I've been quite critical in the past of Swiss-made watches not being particularly well built. I bought an Alpine years and years ago. It was about $500, and the loom on that thing was dreadful. Literally the worst loom I had ever experienced. I think sometimes we associate Swiss made with being synonymous with quality and luxury, but that is just not the case. Steel is steel. It doesn't matter if it's finished in the US, in Switzerland, in China. It behaves the same all around the world. So just because a watch is Swiss made, it doesn't mean it's been finished to a specific standard. And unfortunately, this is one of those examples where yes, it is a Swiss-made watch, but it just doesn't have the same feel even as some more affordable, much more affordable AliExpress watches, sadly. So yeah, I do think my instincts were correct with this brand. It's a shame because I don't like to get watches in on this channel just to criticize them, and that's not what I've done here. I have seen a watch from them where the design is actually something that I think is okay, so I've agreed to review it because I'm curious. And honestly, had this watch been made to an incredible standard, I'd be raving about it by now, but it just feels a bit cheap. I think it looks a little bit cheap as well. I'm not wild about, well, the colour of the day loom is very sort of limey. I'm not wild about this colour bezel. It's very reflective. I think it just looks a bit cheap. It matches the dial. The dial looks okay, but again, I think the colour of the loom during the day just sort of cheapens it a little bit. The bracelet and the clasp does feel quite cheap. Everything just feels a bit sort of thin and loose, and I wouldn't say fragile, but yeah, just like the tolerances or the build quality, engineering, I don't really know how to explain it, but the clasp, for example, it just feels a bit sort of rattly. The bracelet feels thin. I mean, the steel finishing is actually okay. The brushing is nice enough. The polishing is nice enough. The transitions on the case between the two are pretty good. But the safety latch, for example, on the clasp, it's just very thin and cheap looking. The outer shell on the clasp is the same. The diver's extension on the clasp feels a little bit sort of rattly. The pushers on the clasp look a little bit cheap. I've got to say I do like the crystals actually. I like the domed crystal on top of the watch and the fact that the crystal underneath is domed as well. That's pretty cool. I'm not wild about the overall design, but it is well, for me anyway, probably one of their better designs. I mean, some of their designs I'm really not wild about, but of course that's a personal thing. You may love some of their designs and feel that that is enough with the movement and the fact that they are Swiss made to justify the money that they're asking. But for me, this is not an $880 watch, sadly. You know what? I think it is primarily the bracelet and the clasp that just gives this watch a bit of a cheap feel, a feeling that it's, well, just not an $880 watch. You've got push pins throughout the bracelet, the links, well, there's quite a lot of play with the links, which means there's quite a lot of jangle. You can hear and feel the jangle in the bracelet. It's got quite an interesting internal rotating bezel, I've got to say, a sort of transparent floating bezel with lume. And again, you have to applaud them for offering original designs. I just think they need to be a little bit more realistic when it comes to their prices. Just because these are Swiss made and just because there are, decent movements inside these watches, I don't think that is enough to justify these prices, sadly. So unless things improve in terms of the build quality, or unless the prices drop fairly drastically, I think this is probably my first and last Nove. Yeah, it was nice to get one in. It's always nice to experience watches from different brands. But yeah, this channel is all about focusing on watches that offer incredible value for money, and sadly I don't think this is one of those. But guys, I'm sure you will let me know what you think in the comments section. I look forward to reading your comments.